Hi, and thank you for joining us for this episode. Don't laugh at me because I'm enjoying the song.
I was grooving too. I was grooving too. So
We're gonna have to we're gonna have to get a new timer music, a new timer with some different music. I think we've been rocking with that one long enough. But anyway, thank you for joining us for this episode of the State of Leadership, Simple and Beyond. That is Robert Hilliard. I am Whitney Wiley, and we are here on Thursdays talking all things leadership, 12 noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. And have we got a great show for you today? We're continuing the discussion that we started last week, talking about retention and things that you can do that will improve retention. We were talking about great places to work and a report that they had about retention, unlocking the secrets of employee retention. And so we talked through the top 3 reasons that employees stay. Do you remember what they were, Robert?
I believe it's purpose, pride, and fun.
It was purpose, pride, and fun. Absolutely. Absolutely. And when we finish talking, I'm going to ask a question, not just of you, but of the audience in general. It's like, in the end, what is it? What is it like if you could, and don't answer now. Well, Robert, don't answer now. If you are in the audience watching and you have the answer, drop it in the comments. Would love to see what you think. But what is it that ultimately, if you could wrap it all up in one word, what is it that keeps employees in their companies and in their positions and engaged, right? Happy, engaged, and wanting to stay? What is that? You could just tie a bow around it. One word, what would it be? Robert, I'll pose that question to you later, and we'll see if we are on the same page about that. I have my ideas, my thoughts, but you know,
Okay.
we are not the same person.
We are not.
And
Although,
while we think alike
yeah,
in a lot of ways, we are not lockstep on everything, which I think helps to make a good team, right? It keeps us out of groupthink. We should do an episode on groupthink
we
sometime.
should. We should. We should.
So put that on the list for after we are done with vacation. By the way, if you are watching this live or you are watching it in um, now as we are recording it, it's still July, and we're going to be taking the month of August off. So do not look for us live in August. You can catch probably replays in August, but we will not be here live. So if you're watching this on replay and you're like, they said they won't be here next week, it could be because you're on replay months from now. So anyway, any lingering thoughts or anything come to you after we finished wrapping up last week's episode that you might want to talk about?
No, I just think that I'm always concerned that I leave too many clues. When I start talking about previous employers, I hope I didn't leave too many clues so where people can figure out, oh, he's talking about this place or he's talking about that place. But no, I think that, and I try not to bash anybody because I think that I worked at every place I've worked at has been great in some aspects. Others maybe not so much, but overall I've learned a lot everywhere I've
Yeah,
worked. So I'm really excited for this because I think this is something that a lot of organizations struggle with, particularly now, finding out what's going to keep people in their organization and how they can have that symbiotic uh, relationship where the people that come to the relationship are getting something out of it and the organization is getting something out of it as well.
absolutely. It's funny that you mentioned that about leaving too many clues about past employers. It's probably a little more difficult for me not to do that because I spent so much time um at the last place that I worked. And so if anyone knows me from that time of my life, it would be difficult not to. But as the same as you, I try to be measured in what I say. And what's really interesting is the last couple of days I've been um, trying to get some CLE credits. I'm a lawyer in California, and I desperately need some CLE credits. They used to come very easily in the work that I was doing. In the arena that I was in, I was responsible for the education program, the legal education program. So I was always there, and since I've been gone, they've been a little more challenging to come by. And so this past week, I have immersed myself in quite a number of CLE programs. And yesterday, I actually did two. And one of the two that I was listening to, watching, and listening to, there was someone on the panel who was talking about past work experiences. And every time she said something, I was like, I wonder if I sound, I wonder if I sound like that talking about my past experiences, because the context of what she was talking about sort of lent itself to sharing the not so great experiences. But like you just said, even in those environments, in the cultures where things they may not have been the best, there's something to be learned there. There's something to take away from those experiences. I'm a huge believer in every experience is a learning experience, and so nothing is wasted. And I look at my time in that past work situation where I was there longer than I wanted to be,
Mhm.
that every day that I was there was giving me something that I actually am using now. So it was, I believe I was there as long as I was, even though at the time I didn't want to be. I was there because I needed to be there to learn the things, to observe the things that I learned and observed. They were extremely helpful when we were in school, right? Those experiences were the things that I wrote about, the context that I put a lot of the lessons that we learned about leadership and team building and organizations in general. That was my lab. It was my lab. And the not just the organization I worked in, but the others that I was um, it, working around, right? The environment I was working around. So not just my employer, but all the other organizations that I had opportunity to observe and be a part of in different ways. When I sat on the committee of bar examiners, when I sat on the board of nonprofits, et cetera, right? That all of those experiences were the lab that I had for the things that I get to share and help my clients with now.
It's funny that you say that because I remember someone asking me why I was staying at my last organization, and I said because it's my laboratory. And they graciously allowed me to, and I say that I'm not saying that as a joke or flippantly, allowed me to use all the skills that I had learned in my career. And there were some issues there, of course, but it was a place where I could try new things, and those things were encouraged. I didn't always get the best feedback, or it wasn't always the easiest trying to introduce those things, but they were always appreciated when once it got started and it went well. So I say that that's a big thing for me, and you as well, from what you're saying, because we like to experiment, we like to see
Yes.
what's working, we like to try things out. You know me, I if I learn something, I immediately want to test it out, because I'm not just going to take this person's word for it. Not that I don't believe them, but I want to see how it works in my environment,
Yeah.
because not all environments are the same, and what works really well for you may not work so great for me. And what what you think is going to be, in your experience, in their experience, something that's just going to work okay, may be fantastic in my experience. So I always want to try those things out. And it was a lot of, I know we're veering off topic a little bit, but it does connect, right? It's the reason why we stayed.
Absolutely.
A lot of times the things that people thought, well, this is not going to make a really big impact, but it's going to have some impact in what you're doing. Those were the things that made the biggest impact where I was. So I think it's really important to say that, because even though we're not there anymore, and even though it may not have been the optimal experience for us, we gained something from it.
Yes.
And as long as you can say that, it was never a waste of time. Because I know some people will think like, well, I wasted X amount of years in this organization because I didn't achieve the status that I wanted or the level that I wanted. But as long as you have a plan and it's moving you forward in that direction, it may not be in the amount that you think, it's always a worthwhile endeavor.
Absolutely. And so I would say that our conversation is not a field, far or near a field. It is actually the field that we are talking about, because it gets back to why we stayed. And so it may be that, well, I can only speak for myself. Some of why I stayed was because I couldn't find what I was looking for elsewhere. But even that, not finding something elsewhere, led me to a place where I struck out on my own, hung out my own shingle. My husband was trying to talk me into that long before I decided, okay, yes, I will do that. And so again, if you are staying, the key, what you just said was that you have to make a decision about the situation. If you feel like the situation that you're in is not the best, right? So this is speaking to both managers and employees. If you feel like the situation that you're in is not the best, start asking some questions about what can you learn? What can you take away from the experience so that, right, you can use it moving forward, or even in the place that you're in. And I would say the things that turned the experience around, from me wanting to desperately get out of there to me saying, okay, I now have a plan to remove myself from this situation, actually included my offering, right? So here, put yourself in my mindset. I'm actually in a place, and this is going to lead into what we're going to talk about in just a second. But I was actually in a place where I wanted out. And then as I was thinking about it, I was like, well, there are so many things here that do work for me, right? So having autonomy, right? We talked about some of this last week, having autonomy, and getting a boss ultimately who allowed me to express my gifts and talents in ways outside of the four corners of my job description. And in that became my sort of my path towards using the OD tools that I learned in school, right? I created the training program and an internship program, and I was overseeing, managing the interns that came into that program, right? So there were opportunity. I gave myself more work, sort of in a place that I didn't want to work, but that extra work, the extra things that I was doing, right, were in alignment with what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go. And so, like you said, sort of that laboratory, there was sort of the theoretical laboratory on the one hand, where I look back and say, yeah, I got to observe all these things. Then there was a very practical laboratory of, here are the things that I'm doing. I can now say this, right? And again, before I made the decision to strike out on my own, it's like, well, if I hadn't managed staff in a really long time, so having a more recent experience of managing staff right? Gave me something that sort of to take away a recency bias as I was looking to find another job. Having those experiences be recent ones made a difference. And so what I see from that, and I want to get into the 9 high trust leadership behaviors, right? There are these leadership behaviors that are going to make a difference for creating the culture and the environment that engenders um, engagement and employees' desire to stay. Right. So it's like, okay, we talked about here are the things they want: purpose, they want to have pride, and they want fun, right? These are sort of the core, 3 core things that keep employees. But how do you get those? Right? How do you create an environment where that's what people are feeling? And the 9 behaviors are the pathway to that. And so I can say that the last boss that I had, a lot of what we're going to talk about now, right? These are directly in alignment with who she was, what she did, and how she managed not just me, but the others. I didn't need hand holding. Right. At that point, I'd been at the point at which she became my boss. I'd been there 12 years. Right. So I didn't need some of the things that other employees needed. And I became a part of the solution with the other employees in our department. Right. So while I didn't have a title of like assistant director to the department, I took that role on to be there to help with the development of the rest of the staff. And she gave me permission and the a wide berth to do so.
It's really important. I think it's I think that it's key what you're saying here, that in order to get people to want to stay at an organization, there are things that the leaders should be doing in order to create that environment. And a lot of times we don't look at the linkage between the organization and the people. The organization is just the people. And
Right.
if people are doing certain things, then it's going to create the culture, and that's something we talk about on the show a lot, that's going to radiate outward, and it's going to do 2 things. It's going to vacuum seal retention inside that organization, and it's going to attract people to
Yes.
your organization, because those folks are going to be talking about it. If you're good at what you're doing as an organization, you're going to be branding yourself, and we talked about this the last time, so that people will see those things, and it's going to be reflected in all of the things that you do, how you market yourself, how you interview people, how you onboard people, how you train people. It should permeate everything. A lot of organizations don't do it particularly well, but when it's done well, it makes a huge difference.
And the key to doing it well is doing it intentionally.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Which is one of our core principles, intentionality. And so when you can be intentional about what you're doing because you know what it is you want to do, right? Going to a broader concept of having a vision, having a plan. What is it that you're moving towards? And if one of the things that you're moving toward is having a culture of retention and engagement, then here are some behaviors that you and others can adopt. And it starts with listening, right? It starts with listening. I would say I don't know that this list is written from most important to least important, right? There are 9 behaviors listed. I didn't get the feeling it was like, oh, these are in order, but I would say it starts with listening. And the others could be in any order. But if you are not listening, if you're not hearing what your people are saying, right? If you're not seeing what they're doing, how they're behaving, if you're not asking questions, if you're not being curious and getting to the heart of what matters to your team members, then you are missing a huge opportunity to make the link, right, from what it is you want to how you're going to get there. You're missing a piece there. And so asking questions, uh, uh, and not just listening when there's a problem, but listening when things are going well, listening for feedback, listening for opportunities to continuously improve, listening for what's important to them, what their goals are, so that you can make some linkages between their goals and company goals and your goals, right, as a manager.
Listening is huge. And I want to just highlight something that you said, because you mentioned asking questions. It's not just about listening, but also using your curiosity when you hear something to ask the question that's going to spur whatever it is you're looking for. It could be creativity in your employee. It could be solutions to a problem. It could be just more information about certain things.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to go off half-cocked or make conclusions about things that are incorrect. So it's two parts. So it's that really, we like to call it on our show, effective communication. It's listening, asking those questions, and then responding in a way that's going to put you on the right track.
Absolutely. Right. So you've got to listen, and communication is a two-way street. And generally, I think most of us think that communication is the things that we say. And what we say is important. And this is another one of the 9 behaviors, right? Speaking, but how are you speaking? Right? Are you intentional about what you're saying? Are you communicating the speaking side of communication? Because the other side of communication is listening, right? There are communication is multifaceted. There's speaking, there's listening, and then there's making sure that your message is understood, right? So you can talk all day. If no one receives the message and understands what you're saying or believes what you're saying, you've got a problem, right? And so again, this was titled 9 High Trust Leadership Behaviors. So when you're speaking, in order to build trust, you need to be clear. It needs to be open, honest, and transparent communication, speaking, right? You need to be transparent about what you're saying. And there may be times when confidentiality needs to be held on to. You just need to explain that. Being open, honest, and transparent doesn't mean saying things that you and sharing things that you should not be sharing. But if you cannot, then explain that. Say, I'm not at liberty, or whatever the words are that resonate with you, but I'm not at liberty to share that at this time. If I am, I will. Here's what I do know. Here's what I can share, right? And it's one of those things that, and I will say this, when, place I worked, we were going through a reorganization, there was a huge feeling from staff that we were not getting all the information. And the fact that I had a backdoor channel to information, and I knew some things from somewhere else, I knew for a fact that we were not getting the full story, right? An honest story. And that goes to whether or not people can trust you. So if you have staff members and they feel like you're not being straightforward and honest with them, it's going to damage your ability to build trust. Can't build trust, right? That goes towards whether or not someone has pride in working. Right. Yeah, I can't have pride in something that I don't trust.
Right.
So, right. So purpose, pride, and fun. You can stop and ask questions. How do each of these 9 behaviors impact? How do these impact those? right? Are you doing them in a way that enhances your employees' ability to understand and work with their purpose, meaningful work, to have pride in their work, in the organization, working for you? And are they having fun? And so what are you doing or not doing that's impacting this? So listening, speaking, the two we've discussed.
Excellent. And it's really like we talked about earlier, that really effective communication, being clear in your words, intentional, like you said. Those things make a really big impact. Often, and I have this on my wall here. It's this thing, and you've heard me say this from Rumi. It says, before you speak, let your words pass through 3 gates. The first one, the first gate is ask yourself, is it true? The second one is it necessary? And the third one, is it kind? And it always, it amazes me when I find, or when I interact with people, or I see things on TV where people are saying things and I'm going, does this person have any filter whatsoever? You really have to be sure. And which is why I sometimes am a little slow to answer questions, because I'll hear something and I may have a menu of things running through my head, and I'm kind of trying to gauge, okay, if I say this, what impact is that going to have on the listener? Yeah. But it's okay. I mean, we do value people that come up with quick answers, and sometimes there's a need for that. Like when you're on a game show. Other times you want to be more measured in what you're saying and really let those things pass through those gates.
Oh, I like that example. I would say, as a lawyer, right? So this is me as a lawyer. If you are not on a game show, pause. Right? And if you have a habit of pausing before you respond, then someone won't say, because you always respond quickly, that the time that you pause before you respond is out of character, and therefore you're looking for the right answer. So always pause. How about that? Right? Just take a breath, think through what it is you want to say. The filters are great. Is it true? Is it, necessary? Is it kind? Right? Great filters. And right now we're in a climate where we could certainly use a lot more people taking the time, taking a pause, and running whatever it is they're about to say through a filter.
Yeah. So, well, yeah. And we're not political on the show, but we are at a time when people
into politics.
No. I'm just saying, because I'm gonna add to what you're saying. We're really at a time when people, it's almost valued that you say a rash, brash, or irrational thing, and then you double down on it when people. That's, just because people are normalizing that doesn't mean that it's a good thing to do. So
absolutely. So take the lawyer's advice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Slow down, take a pause, take a deep breath, think it through, run it through the filters, and then respond. And if you get in the habit of doing that, right, then again, when you're in the habit of sort of just rattling off answers or responses to someone without thinking it through, that one time, those 2 times, I'm talking to you as a manager, you're answering your employees' questions, and then now they've got something, there's something brewing in your organization, and you take a moment before you answer. They're not like, what is Robert hiding? Right? What are you hiding? Why won't you tell us? Why won't you tell us the truth? So, pay attention to your tells. That's the other thing, right? Pay attention to your tells, and we all have them. So, and that's a self-awareness thing. Have some self-awareness around your tells and make some adjustments. Because the last of the 3 you mentioned was being kind. I'm going to sort of riff off of that. And the next behavior is about gratitude, right? Thanking people, creating a culture. You want to create a culture of appreciation, right? Not directly kind, but it sparks that when you are thankful and appreciative of what other people bring to the table, what they do for you, what they do for the organization. Um, right? It sends a message. And all of this ultimately, that your behaviors ultimately send a message. And you want to ask this question of yourself: what message am I sending with my behaviors? Right? What am I communicating? Right? We've talked about this. 7% of communication is about the words you speak. The other 93% is all the rest, your body language, your tone, the tenor, right? All the context, all the rest of that outside of the specific words. And so if it's that important, you have to think about, what am I doing? What am I saying that is communicating a message? And is that the message that I want to send? Right. So in addition to, is it true? Is it, kind? Is it necessary? Am I being intentional with it?
Yeah.
Right. And slowing down and being appreciative, and creating that culture where everyone is appreciative of what other people are doing their part, right? Because every member of your team has a part to play, and everyone's part is different. And when people are doing it, you're able to make beautiful music. Robert's a musician, right? He's been in bands, and playing, impromptu, right? You play some music, it's impromptu, some it's very scripted. But if each person doesn't do their part, you have third grade violin class, which is
Oh,
painful, which is painful.
yeah. Everybody, look, and just because it may sound or feel like a third grade violin class, right, doesn't mean that it can't be better, right? So it's always looking at that, and looking at the things that can be improved when it comes to creating that environment where people want to stay. I think one of the things that, and I mentioned this a lot on the show, one of the things that gets in the way of leaders when it comes to exhibiting certain behaviors is the ego. It's like, why do people need to hear that I appreciate their work? Or they feel like telling somebody or showing gratitude is going to make them look weak or something like that. Not all leaders are like this, of course, but I've worked with some that were very stingy with compliments about work that was well done. Only time they weren't was when it made them look good. When it made them look good, they gave you tons of compliments because you saved their bacon or made them look good or got them out of a jam. But you don't have to wait for those moments to show people that you appreciate what they do.
Right. The next one is developing, right? Investing in your people, helping them grow as people, not just workers on your team, right? Not just for them to perform, but as people. As they are better people, they're going to be better employees. And so your development should reflect the totality, the wholeness of who they are. And there are ways that you can do that don't have to cost your company a lot or anything, right? Books are free from the library. So if you read something that will help them as a person, and make a recommendation, have a book club, read some things together as a team, right? That helps all of you grow as individuals as well as members of your team. And nurture their talents and interests. Again, going back to listening, right? And asking questions. What's important to them? What matters to them? What are their talents? What are their interests? How do those things, them developing those things, help your company? Because it helps them. they're happy, they're engaged, they want to stay, right? That will get you closer to your ROI. Oop, lost
Uh-oh.
my earphone.
Oh no. Now you can only hear half of what I'm saying.
I don't know where it went. Oh, I
But
don't know where it went. I can still hear, for whatever reason, at least at the moment, I can still hear you. So
don't do what I do. I drop mine and then I step on them. So
any thoughts on development?
development, I'm going to hold off on that because I think that is huge. And I think that I will say something. It doesn't have to be a big thing. Development, like you said, it doesn't have to be a big thing. You can help people develop at a very measured pace. A lot of times when we think of development, we think of tuition reimbursement and all those other things, but you can help people develop at a very measured pace. Still looking for it? It's gone into the vortex where one of your socks goes. It's in that vortex. But it could be small things. You can start small with development and then build to bigger things. It could be finding out if there's a deficiency in your department, or it could be a job in your department that no one wants to do. Put somebody in charge of that, see if they have interest in that, and let them grow, let them do that. For example, in my last job, we had open enrollment for flexible spending. Man, did I hate going out and doing those presentations. But there were some people in the department that loved doing those things. Put them in charge of that. Let them get really good. It's great for their public speaking. It's also going to increase their knowledge about the flexible spending program, the products that are attached to it, to your benefits and things like that. So you're really building that person's skill set up when it comes to those things. And then you can look for other things that they're interested in. And you don't want to just wait until they're interested in it, in those things. Look at that person and see where their strengths and where their deficiencies are, and suggest some things to them. Make it a project for them. So when performance appraisal time comes, you can say, okay, I gave you this project and you did well on it, or maybe you didn't do so well on it. And you can have that conversation. You make it part of that person's overall development within that department, and then you can branch out and see about career growth and things like that.
Absolutely. Couldn't say that any better. The next one is caring, right? Showing that you care, taking, and how do you show someone that you care? It's no different at work than in the other aspects of your life, right? You take the time to understand who they are and what's important to them about their experiences. And so you don't have to be besties. You don't have to go on vacation, right? This is not you having to have dinner or drinks with them every night after work, but taking the time to understand what's going on in their lives, both inside and outside of work, because what happens outside impacts what happens inside. Right. And so just knowing who they are and that you care about what they're going through makes a huge difference.
Absolutely. Caring is, again, one of those things where ego can get in the way and stop you from showing you're caring. But it makes a big difference when people know that you care. I think the flip side of that is, what's the opposite of showing caring is taking people for granted, right? Yeah. Like you thinking they're always going to be there, not recognizing when they do a great job. And then being surprised when you find out that they're going to leave. It almost sounds like a relationship. And that I love to connect these things to personal relationships. It's the same basic thing, like you said. It's like if you don't show your partner that you care, if you always think they're going to be there, and so you just don't, go that extra mile sometimes to show them that you really care and appreciate them, show gratitude, the other principle. You might be wondering why they're leaving. So the same thing happens in work, in the work environment.
And if you are doing these things when the time comes, and people are going to leave, right? People are going to leave, and they don't always leave because working for you is bad or working for your organization is bad. So that's not the message we're trying to send. But if you are doing these things, right? If these are your go-to behaviors, when someone makes a decision to leave, you're probably going to know that they were looking for something that they can't get in your organization. And maybe it's a position, right? It could be a position. I just share, real quick, a story. I think I've shared this story before, but I was working, for an organization, and I was waiting they were actually in the process of creating a position for me, but I was on a tight time frame. Right. And I was looking out for myself. And the point at which they went through all the things that needed to be gone through, and they got the position approved and were able to actually bring me on in that position, I was already somewhere else because I didn't have the luxury of waiting 6 months, 9 months, right? State governments move very slowly. And the position that I had there was a temporary position, and I was already like 4 or 5 months past the date I was supposed to be done with that position. And I could not afford to lose that job and then wait months, right? The fact that they didn't know I was still there 5 months after I was supposed to be done, right? I had no idea how long it was going to take for them. But so you have to knowing what people are going through becomes an important part of your relationship with them ultimately.
I don't know if this is on the list, but I'm going to add it. Pay attention. Pay attention.
Yes.
There's so many things, so many problems can be solved if you're just paying attention. If
yes.
You're paying attention, if you're listening, you're watching and you're seeing what's going on, then you can introduce some of the other skills or practices that are on this list. You're listening, asking questions, but pay attention. And sometimes people just don't pay attention. And sometimes it could be as simple as, hey, I saw something that was unusual. Let me ask a question about this.
Yeah. And I think that goes to your point about, ultimately these are relationships, personal, work, what have you, right? The same principles apply. And so not paying attention, right? Not listening, not paying attention to what someone has been communicating that they want or need. And at some point they'll say, okay, I'm not getting what I want or need here. I'm going to move on. And again, that's not necessarily in a negative connotation. It could be that I was going to share the story that there just isn't a position here, right? I worked in places sometimes when they're small enough that there just isn't somewhere else to go. And that particular experience, there was nowhere else for me to go until they created the position. And so I loved working there. I would have loved to have stayed there. There was going to be, once I got in permanently, there were going to be other opportunities, but I didn't have the luxury at the time. So I took another position. And of course, not long after I took that position, I get word, oh, it's been approved. And I was like, well, I'm already somewhere else, right? So just, you do what you can. The next one is sharing. And it's sharing all kinds of things, right? It's sharing, particularly in private companies, publicly traded companies, private companies where there are profits and bonuses to be had, opportunities for compensation. This may not apply in every working situation, but in the ones that they do, share the bounty, right? Sharing the bounty. If your employees feel like it's only at the top, it's not trickling down, it's not being shared, you're going to create problems for yourself.
Yeah, I remember this. It's so funny the thoughts that jump into my head when you start talking about these things. I remember early in my career, I was working in an organization, and it was very it was made very public information that the person that was in charge of our group had bought a brand new BMW with their bonus. And I remember where the desk where I was sitting, every day around 3 p.m., the sun came through that window and baked the left side of my face. And I remember saying, hey, look, can we just get a shade? It's something to block that. And the person looked me in the face and said, we don't have money to do that. And I wanted to say, you just bought a brand new car with your bonus. You can't buy a $40 shade to stop me from getting skin cancer. I remember thinking, I gotta leave this place.
So many things on this list we're not done there. No listening, no gratitude, no thanking for what you're not caring, right? And definitely the not sharing part. Yeah. The next one is celebrating, and we're big on this here, right? You should be celebrating the big things and the little things, right? When people do something that brings great value to your organization, for a customer, for a client, for your constituents, when they go above and beyond, right? It's celebrating. If they do something in their outside world, right? Celebrate. When I was still employed, I want to say the timing of the very first book that I was a part of, right? That there was acknowledgement and some celebrating. It had nothing to do with work, but celebrating, right? So, but you can't know those things if you don't know your people.
Right.
Right. If you don't know what they're doing, what they're interested in, and the kinds of things, experiences they're having. Again, going back to listening and caring and the development and what they're doing in and outside of work. You can't celebrate those things if you don't know about them.
I think that's great.
Another behavior is to be inspirational, right? Being an example, showing employees how their work relates to the company's bigger purpose and goals, and inspiring them to continue doing what they're doing, because what they're doing matters, right? That's how you're inspiring people, by tapping into their motivation. But you can't do that if you don't know what motivates them. You don't know what inspires them. So again, listening, having conversations, getting to know people, showing that you care, developing them, all of these things, none of these things are in a vacuum. They're not in a vacuum. They go hand in hand.
Yeah, I totally agree. So I wasn't counting. What number is that?
That's number 8. We've got one more.
Let's hear it.
Okay. The last one is hiring. And I'm huge on this one, right? It was like huge on all of them. But I said it starts with listening, but it sort of starts with hiring, right? Because you've got to bring the right people into the team. And once you bring people onto the team, you need to show them these things from the very beginning, day one, or before day one, right? As you meet them in the interviews, you are communicating who you are as a manager, what your company is about, what your culture is about, from the very first time you interact with them. But definitely when you are onboarding them, the point of onboarding, and I say this, do an onboarding training once a month, every other month or so, is that the point of onboarding isn't to get the paperwork done so people can get on payroll, right? Which is what a lot, that sort of, this is what we do. Yes, that is a part of it. And yes, it's a necessary part. But the point is to set your new hires up for success, right? Having them understand more directly now who you are as a manager, what team they're a part of, what the culture is of your organization, and that we are here with you day one on, making sure that you succeed, not that you just survive in your job, right? Or that you're here until you decide you're not here. That you are a part, you are now a part and a fabric, part of the fabric of this organization, of this particular team. And I'm here to help you succeed. And so if you hire well, right, you set yourself up for a better chance for retention. If you don't hire well, you set yourself up for um, potentially disaster, right? You don't, you want to make sure that you're finding people who are the fit for the job that you have, emotionally, talent wise, potential wise, et cetera, et cetera.
I agree with those, and especially that last one. I think that with hiring, though, I added, I made a note and foster team building and togetherness, because once you get somebody onboarded, they should feel like they are a part. It may take some time, of course, before they're integrated, but they should feel like they are a part of the team and that they belong there. So, team building, togetherness, and belonging. You want to shorten the time that it takes for them to feel those things so that they can start producing right away. I worked, one of the organizations that I worked in, there was a hazing period for new people. You would get there and no one would talk to you. They wouldn't tell you. And it was, it was a tough environment, but, and because I present the way I present, very, studied and nerdy, they like, we're gonna just really put it, but they don't know I'm from the hood, so that doesn't work. So it's like I have a lot thicker skin than I appear to have, but it was part of their, it was part of their culture. Actually, what they did to everybody. And I remember I was giving a workshop and I brought it up, and they were like, well, they were stunned that I was bringing this up. I said, this is not how you foster togetherness. If you want people to be part of the team, this is probably not the best way to do it. You want to make sure that people feel included, that when they say hello to you, you just don't turn and walk away because, they didn't address people by my title or whatever it is. A lot of times when people come into an organization, they don't know the ins and outs of your culture. Sit down with them and teach them, let them understand that, because it may not be evident right away.
Right.
Some people have an eye for that stuff. Some people don't. Don't wait until they fall into the trap before you decide to help them out, and foster those things, that team building, that togetherness and belonging, because it's going to help you as a leader and as an organization.
I love that. I love that. I want to say this last thing sort of about this, the hiring and the onboarding period and setting your employees up for success. And then I'm going to ask you the question that I had at the beginning before we wrap up. But letting them know that you want them there, feeling welcomed, right? That you've been waiting in anticipation of them starting, not just so that the work gets done, right? So that while there was a vacancy, you're coming in and taking off the plate, the extra work people have been doing while there was a vacancy, but that you really are valuing them. And some of the things that you do that indicate this, and this seems like a no-brainer, but I hear story after story where this is not the case. People show up on their first day, they don't have passwords, their computers are not ready, the phone or whatever devices that they need are not there, the office isn't clean and set up and waiting for, right? All of those things send a message. And if the message that you're sending is that we forgot you were coming, but here's your space, go get to work, right? Then you can do that. If the message that you want to send is that you care about them, right? That you're setting them up for success, then you want to show that you have thought those things through. And a simple checklist of the things that need to be ready to go on that day, right? I could think of a situation. I had to wait hours for someone to come and set me up with passwords for a computer and voicemail, right? It shouldn't take that. I had a client who told a story. When she got there, she had to clean the office that she took over because the person who had the job left it in a mess, and no one took the time in between to do something about that, right? It sends a message. She didn't stay very long, by the way. She was like, I'm not, because it sent a message. So think about, again, being intentional, thinking about what you're doing, how you're doing it, why you're doing it. And if you need to, put yourself in the position of that person and say, what would I want or need to feel that I was being supported and that I was wanted and welcome here? And then double it.
I totally agree with that. I totally agree with that.
All right. So I want to ask this question. And so when you think of what we talked about today, what we talked about last week, what one word sort of encapsulates what it is that we are trying to get to or tap into with employees in order for retention to be on the path?
For myself?
Yes. Yeah, for yourself.
Growth. That's the word.
Okay.
Growth.
Okay. I could get with that, right? I think growth is absolutely an important thing. What I was thinking was emotion, right? That we want to tap into an emotion, right? Sales happen through emotion, tapping into people's emotion. That's what gets people to take action. And so all of the things that we've been talking about elicit some emotion in your people, and that emotion is going to get them to either stay or go. So tap into the emotions that get them to stay.
Absolutely.
Right? And definitely I can see growth is a part of that, right? Making sure that they feel like they have opportunity to learn, to grow. And right now I feel like you care about me, right? And that's the emotion, that I feel wanted, appreciated, all of that. And okay, I'm gonna work with that moving forward.
And they can go hand in hand, because if somebody grows, they're gonna feel those positive emotions. If somebody feels
absolutely
emotions, they're going to want to grow too. So they feed off of each other.
Absolutely. All of it, like I said, none of these things exist in a vacuum.
Right.
None of this exists in a vacuum. So we are at the end of the second of our two parts. I just want to remind you again, we are taking the month of August off. So if you are watching this and then you go, oh, this is the first time you're like, oh, I'm going to show up next Thursday in August, don't. We won't be here live. I probably will run Encores, but we won't be here live during the month of August. But if someone wanted to reach out to you, Robert, in the month of August and wanted to work with you, how would they do that?
They can reach out to me by emailing me at inspireme@roberthilliardcoaching.com, or they can go to the website, Robert Hilliard Coaching, fill out that discovery form, and that comes straight to me. Let me know what goals you have for yourself, what challenges you're experiencing. We can set up a discovery call, and we can decide whether or not we'd be a good fit for each other and go from there.
Awesome. And if you'd like to reach out to me so that you can tap into the emotions that you have about whether to stay or whether to go or to grow or try something new, shiftingintoaction.now.site, shiftingintoaction.now.site, and you can complete the form there and book a strategy call with me, and we can go from there. So again, thank you Thank you for being a part of our community. This, I believe, in 3 years, right? We take this when we come back, we will start year 4 of our podcast, video casts, whatever we're calling this. And we want to just thank you. Thank you for being a part. If you are interested in being a guest, please reach out to Robert or I. If you are interested in us covering a particular topic, please reach out. Over the course of August, we'll be looking at planning for the next season and the shows coming up through the rest of the year, the themes that we'll be covering, etc. And we would love to take into account, we would like to listen to you and take into account the things that are important to you. So with that, we want to thank you and enjoy the rest of the summer. Take care.
Bye now.